Hello, everyone. This is Annalyn from the Asterisk Intelligence team, and welcome to our Thursday Dashboard Dive session. Today's Dashboard Dive is a transaction count by delivery channel dashboard, and we're going to get a couple of bonus dashboards into today, covering a variety of different topics, also related to transaction analysis. So we'll get started. My CU-based session should be up on the screen for you. But a couple of housekeeping notes that we usually mention before our webinars start. If you have any questions, please do use the chat feature, which is available via your Zoom session. You may need to hover over your viewing bar and you select that option off a menu. But I have a chat up as well on the right-hand side of my screen, and I'm going to see any questions come through if you would like to send them in. All participants are muted when you come in, and just for the purpose of keeping everything moving smoothly here, the chat session is the best way to get in touch with a question. And then we also have, as I always mention, we are in our training credit union, a Bedrock Community Credit Union environment. So we're not going to see any real member transaction data here today, and we're not even going to really see any member names. But if we did, it'd all be fake data. Now, Bedrock Community Credit Union is also just a small note. I don't think we mention this very often, but all of our credit unions are given a couple of logins to a Bedrock Community Credit Union CU-based session. It would be a separate icon available to you, usually for training purposes. But I did just want to point that out because it came up recently across my radar, and it was helpful to a credit union. If you ever want to have an environment where you can get in and play with tools without necessarily having to tools or configurations without necessarily having to do it on your own live data or review your own members, you have the ability to access Bedrock as well. If you don't personally have the credentials, you want to ask your if you have someone in your IT role or maybe education role might have that. But if you can't find it and you're interested in it, please reach out to the CSR team. So, small diversion aside, this should take about half an hour or a little less because we just have this one dashboard plus two others, very similar ones. So a lot of the stuff we talk about is going to be overlapping here. So anyway, here we go. I have got my CU-based session searched. I'm using the search box, so I have searched the word transaction. And we get a lot of results. I've actually already paged down. I've used the page down button to get down to this section. But I wanted to show you sort of the variety. We have some maintenance tools, right? So here's this tool called number 869 transaction reversal. That's a maintenance tool. So not all of them are reports because of the way I have my filters set up here. But we do have a nice grouping. We've got a teller activity. We looked a little bit at some teller dashboards last week, if you happen to catch last week's session. If you did not, it was recorded and is posted online. It's a YouTube video online available to catch up on if you'd like. A transaction override report, okay? So today's is actually right above it at tool number 867, the transaction count by delivery channel. Now, we'll talk about what a delivery channel is, and if you're new to dashboards or working with data in CU-based, sometimes the terminology rather than just the tool is the first challenge, and I can definitely relate to that. You know, if you hear people talk about application types on your products, and if that doesn't mean anything to you yet, then you have a little bit of homework to sort of go do some research on our help documentation or talk to some people in various departments to find out what different terms mean to help you best interpret the data that we see in these analytical tools. So we are going to start in transaction count by delivery channel, but then we'll pop up as well to 866 and 865 to look at a slightly different angle. Our summary comparison is actually a very specific purpose to that tool. So we'll look at that, and then a transaction activity by branch is almost identical to transaction count by delivery channel. We're just, as you can tell from the name, we're sort of slicing it a slightly different way. So first things first, again, back on the terminology point, transaction activity from a member's perspective is different than transaction activity from a teller's perspective. So if you are coming in with the mindset, you know, maybe you remember everything we talked about in last week's teller activity dashboard, and it is all related, but teller activity is counted out by the actual teller item. You know, the number of transactions done by a teller involves the number, you know, the items that are passing through that transaction. So 4 checks got deposited, et cetera, et cetera. For that member, though, all 4 checks are all posted on one transaction line as a total of whatever all those 4 checks added up is equal to. So we're talking a slightly different, just operationally, transactions are coded slightly different for the one tellers or members. And we have a very, very good help documentation page on the difference between the 2 of those. If you were to click on the little italicized I button in the bottom of the CU Base session, it takes you right into help. And if you're, it also will take you, it takes you right into help specifically defaulted to the screen that we're on. Since we're on the main menu, that wouldn't be so helpful. Outside of the fact it gets you there, and now you can use the search bar to find some of the materials we've written on how we process and code transactions. And one of the things that we do for processing and coding transactions, and I went ahead and clicked right into the dashboard for a second here, we actually assign an origin code to each of the member transactions. So 99 is an automatic system processing delivery channel, which is assigned the origin code of 99. Similarly, certificate processing, teller processing, there's phone operator processing, there is bill pay processing, there is debit, specifically debit signature transaction processing, and then there's debit ATM PIN network, or ATM network processing. I forget the exact title for that one. There's a different, we'll see the list in a second. But the list goes on. So there is a definite list of these certain origin types, and this dashboard is not going to tell you what they all are. It's just simply summarizing the most popular ones. I want to say that it shows you anything, yes, this is what the filter right here in the top right. It groups anything that statistically is lower than 5%, any activity that's statistically lower than 5% of all the transactions your members have done or have been done for your members, into a group called Other. So we could change that to 0, and we would get a few others populated here. This would be what we'd consider the full list. So from a data mining standpoint, we're able to be quite flexible in what we're looking at here. If you feel that some of this is not statistically significant, we can suppress it from the list. Now, another thing to keep in mind, and you probably have noticed it already, especially if you've been part of our Dashboard Dive session, is we're always thinking about time slicing and segmentation, filtering. Specifically with filtering, it's always the concept of what questions can I ask of this data. So it's cool that I see data really quickly, and I don't have to build a query to find it. I just point and click, hit the tool, and boom, there's an answer for me on how many teller processing transactions were posted to a member account, and credit card processing, et cetera, phone operator transactions. Now, these 100, a small diversion, these 106 don't necessarily equate to phone calls. So think about a transaction you see on a member record, and a member might have made 2 transfers on the phone call, on the same phone call. So we're talking about transactions, not events necessarily, specifically. So got to be double checking and catching yourself if that's your tendency, is to want to think that some of these mean something other than what they are. If you're not familiar with transaction processing, it's easy to do. So just want to make sure that we cover the distinction between the two. So anyway, filtering, time slicing, we've got current month. So it is defaulting, or no, excuse me, that is not current month. Current month is July. We have prior months. So since we're only given a month period we are allowed to look at, this is telling me that this is as of end of month, June 2018, so June 30th. As of June 30th, this is the count for activity that happened in the period of June, so the month of June. If we wanted to, we could, since we have editability here, I could put in May of 2018. I'm going to hit enter, and our numbers recalculate. Looks like we may have even added one delivery channel. We had one get added to the list there, and we have a new total. So we could keep going backward in time, and it's from a time slicing perspective. Most often, when we talk about end of month time slices, you hear me or Thomas or whoever's holding these webinars tell you that we can go back 6 end of month periods. This is one of those lucky dashboards, actually, though, that is operating off of a monthly, an aggregated file that holds the monthly summaries and separately from the actual end of month database. So we actually have this type of information available all the way back to as far as 2004. If your credit union has been on CU-Base since 2004, you could go back that far. If you have not, your cutoff point, that's the word I'm looking for, your cutoff point is going to be your conversion date, whatever your first end of month was after the conversion. So the value of really being able to, it doesn't build a trend line for you on the screen, but as you update, it's very simple to update the month slices here and get your new total. You can take a look at the new totals and just pick a quick comparison of, let's say, oops, put an extra number in there, May 2017 compared to May 2018. Just two filters and we get a clear picture. There's a significant difference, obviously. Dropped drastically in this test environment to about 1,300 with the winning origin type being 10 versus a year later in May 2018, the winning origin type is now where most things are happening through automatic system processing. And it's still about 1,300 certificate transactions happening. So we stayed about flat there. But see what I'm saying? Just a couple of quick changes and you're paying attention to the numbers and we can see some interesting patterns develop. And I know Thomas and I have been talking a lot lately, and Keegan as well, have been talking a lot lately about analyzing transactions over time for these larger chunks of time, specifically related to teller processing. That's a big topic right now here at CU Answers, is the teller processing platforms and how often are members using it. Has that usage really decreased over time or increased over time? And full disclosure, our results are saying that teller processing usage has decreased over time. I think the number was 14%. So across a 10-year period. So you can look at these numbers for yourself, for your own credit union here in this dashboard. Now, a couple other things this dashboard is doing for you is it's sort of automatically calculating and weighting out here what is the percentage of the entire result set that this represents. So you can start to see if there's some that are relatively close together, you can see what we're dealing with there. The member count and transactions per member are pretty standard pieces of information to have when we're looking at this type of information. Just a calculation here to help you see sort of the distribution of how much of this activity is probably just, like I said, with phone operator transactions, people calling in and doing 2 or 3 or 4 things at once, or is it really down at about 1 transaction per member? So we might be able to realistically sort of use this as to sort of theorize that this is roughly about the same number of phone calls we got that involved phone operator usage, right? So the only other thing I'll mention as far as what we need to be aware of data-wise, I hope you can see some vision for how you could use this, especially if you're wanting to pin down a certain type of transaction of these delivery channels and that transactions are getting processed through. But only other thing I want to mention data-wise is this member count. And we talked about this a little bit last week as well. We're looking at 72, almost 7,300 as the total member count. This is not intended to be reconcilable to your actual membership count. As you can imagine, perhaps one member has done both a phone operator transaction and something on the teller line. We have them counted once in each, etc. So you just have to be aware that that member is getting counted on the row across the row. So one of the other things that comes into play too is with the branch filter, which I'm sure you saw, and we all know how that works then, and we could use the lookup to choose, maybe I only want to be focusing on the downtown branch. And these are my results for the downtown branch transaction. The branch coded onto the transaction is for the downtown branch. So if a member does, we have, I don't see system processing actually, but I guess we can use automatic processing as a case study here. So on Origin 99, automatic system processing is things like fees automatically posting, things like dividends automatically posting, et cetera, et cetera. and a person might have a fee and a dividend. If multiple automatic system transactions have been posted to the account, the member is only counted once in this total. But if they have done multiple transactions across the rows again, like they had automatic, maybe the fee was posted to a certificate, but they also have a Save to Win certificate and made a deposit to the certificate. The fee is under 99, their cash deposit is under 10 for certificate processing. So that person is counted once in each row in the member count. The transaction is counted once in each row as well, of course. So aside from that, your basic export, we can export the full list here, and these little right forward or right pointing arrows are also exporting for the individual line of these 113 people. And then, of course, common bonds. Click this and start to actually analyze further. Hopefully, you're very familiar with the common bonds routine by now, but if you're not, definitely take a look at this and start poking through each one of these 4 options. Tons of information available to analyze about a member segment that is doing certificate processing in May of 2018, for example. Okay, and then Member Connect, of course, is the ability to act on any of this analytical data we're finding, and action with any one of these 4 options. Send them an online banking or email message, print out some mailing label to send them something in the mail, set up some selective statement inserts on the CU-based config side. There's quite a bit of other work that involves getting collateral ready for this one, but it helps. It's sometimes an easy shortcut to get to it through your group you're targeting here, or flood a tracker, a sales tracker, to use for telemarketing or next suggested product, et cetera, et cetera. And again, specifically only to these 113 or these 2 people, or this whole list that ended up falling onto the result for May. So I haven't seen any questions come through on this dashboard at this point in time. So if you have any, please send them through, and I can pop back in here if needed. But I'm going to back out and go into now transaction activity by branch. Tool number 865. And here we are with a very similar looking dashboard. Again, we have number of transactions. We don't get number of members on this one, but that's not always what we're looking at. That's not always what we're looking to analyze with this dashboard. There's quite a few of the other dashboards. There's a that are focused more toward looking at the members and the member counts. And one of those is, if you haven't used it yet, it's called Where My Members Branch. Where Your Members Branch. And I'm struggling to remember the tool number for that one, but if you're doing transactional and member branch usage analysis, that is certainly one I would recommend taking a look at. Similarly, we have the ability to go back in time, also 2004, up to that point, or your conversion date, whichever one is most recent. Now, we're still dealing with origin codes as far as filters go, but our rows are by branch now. So rather than defaulting to looking at the origin codes and the actual delivery channel first, we've got it broken down by branch, and again, similarly, sort of percent representation of the entire list here. But we could say I only want to look at 01 for system processing, 99 for automatic processing, and 15 for phone operator, like we've been thinking about here. And across the rows, we recalculated. So that's of the total, I don't remember what we had, 17,000 maybe, 14,000. A good chunk of that, 12,868, are already accounted for across just these 3 delivery channels or origin codes. And because we don't have a lookup up here, back when this one was built, the strategy at the time was to have the entry boxes, and then we built in this helpful sort of directory of what each of the actual delivery channels are. So you can see here some of those additional options, say ACH processing, member transfers, sort of self-directed transfers they might have initiated. Now, 96 is online banking. So this is also, online banking is one I know I've personally talked to credit unions who'd like to come in here and say, I want to compare my online banking transaction counts and volumes and member counts against my teller. So how is that volume looking over time? Is it going up compared to each other, or down compared to each other, or relatively static? So that's a really popular one to look at against each other. Phone operator and teller processing are also very popular to look at together. A couple of other really popular, also really popular to look at together are 13 for ATM debit PIN processing and 16, right? Yep. Oh, looks like we didn't have, oh, and that makes sense because for our training system, we don't have any card system or card processing network stuff set up. So, yeah, so there, and just, yeah, there's a lot here. Well, if we were to choose 14 and look at stop payment fee processing, if you're using the CU-based stop payment tools, then we could get a quick look at some of that information. Now, there's other reports for it too, but we have value at looking at any of these, really. Let's back out of this one. I don't have any questions coming through on that one, but if you have any, again, we can pop back into any of these if you would like. And I can't stress enough that the help pages are very well, are written out there's quite a bit of information on the help pages for each of these dashboards. And then last but not least, tool number 866, transaction activity summary comparison. So, this is where we're still dealing with origin code. That's sort of our key data factor across this all three of these sets. And I use the lookup button, and here's that list looking kind of familiar by now. We might want to pick teller processing, or let's do phone. Well, yeah, I'll probably get some results with teller processing. Nope, I did not. Okay, let's do online banking. Unselect teller processing. It might not give me anything in my training credit union, and that's going to be kind of a bummer. But if I were to open the help page here, I think I will, and I'll switch my share to it just so you can see. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to just sort of talk through what we have here. Now we're looking at on an actual member account level. So on the far left, we can see we're going to get an account number. So we're going to get a list of member accounts. And I'm trying to find member accounts who have kind of gone to the extremes with their transaction activities in the last couple of periods, and the periods being an individual month. So we have last month, 2 months, and 3 months ago. So now we're trying to dive in on the individual member and say maybe they have, maybe they normally do, tons of transactions, and if they're doing the difference in their own activity, we're comparing that one member's own activity against itself. So if the member normally does 200 transactions and we get a difference of anything above 25 with the way I'm setting it up right now, comparing period 1 to period 2, and period 1 is last month and 2 is 2 months ago, then we are, we're going to get them, they will be populated on this list. I don't know why I kept thinking a different word in my head, but they will be populated on this list if they have this big of a difference. Now, we only have a greater than sign as far as looking at the calculating the actual difference, but we could easily swap these periods around as well to say, if it's greater 2 months ago than it is last month, that means they have decreased, okay? So let's get a visual on this just so you can see it. It's pretty cool, but also if you have tool authority to the tool, it is worth going in and checking out on your own as you have access to CU-Base at your own credit union. So I've got a browser open now. I opened the help page for this and I clicked on the screenshot that we have. This is just a development environment as well, but we did block out the account numbers. However, that's where those account numbers are, and we could drill down on that as well. And because in this example it was filtered to teller processing, we're looking at, for this individual member, they did at least, okay, so across 8 transactions, $1,864 involved debits. Maybe that was one large withdrawal. I don't know, probably not because it's pretty specific, but, and then the other 7 transactions accounted for credits, and this is just a guess, but it's giving you the hint that these weren't just one transaction for 1,800 and one transaction for 804. There were 8 transactions that comprised of this total activity for the member in this period. But 2 months ago, there was nothing. They had they bought a pop at McDonald's. They bought 2 pops at McDonald's or something, and didn't put any money in their account. Nope, just 1 pop because it's only 1 transaction. But you see what I mean? We're looking at now use that activity difference comparatively, again, comparing the member's own activity to itself to see what's happening there. This is reminding me a lot, I hope you're familiar with, it's reminding me a lot of the Losing the Love dashboard that we have, a totally separate tool as well that looks at other elements of a member's product and service usage with you and compares and looks to see if that's changing drastically or if it's decreasing over time. So this one focuses specifically on transaction activity, and again, we could filter to any one of these origin codes. So we could be looking at debit card processing right now. If you have online debit cards, we could be looking at online banking transaction activity at this point in time, rather than just the teller processing origin code, which is the one. And again, I say origin code and delivery channel, they're interchangeable terms. So when we talk about those two in the context of transactions, they are the same. Okay, so that is it. If I back up, we're just going to see the help support on this screen, and it sort of lays out for you what each of those periods represent. Little information on extra information on what some of the codes mean, et cetera, et cetera. So quite a bit there as far as discovering what the technical aspects are for how the data should work and what you should expect to see in these dashboards. So that wraps it up as far as what we're going to look at today, and hopefully you got a couple of ideas of different ways, at least have gotten eyes on all the different things we could look up in this dashboard. Maybe you don't care about teller, phone operator, and debit like I was looking at. Maybe you want to focus on error correction processing. There was another one in there that was, I think it was 08, member adjustment, as we labeled it here. Member adjustments, what adjustments have we made on memberships? Just be cautious and understand that on these dashboards, because they are intended, they're not intended to necessarily be able to shuffle directions and change the perspective. We really are focusing on transaction activity by branch. So if you have the question of saying, okay, now I want to summarize it by delivery channel, it's easier to pop out of the tool and go into the tool that's built for that purpose of transaction count by delivery channel. So that does it for today. Like I said, next week, we do have one scheduled next week, and I forget the name of the topic already. It is the audit file maintenance tool. So we're going to totally change directions as far as topics go. But, and that tool is a lot of a lookup tool. There's not an incredible amount of analysis built into it as far as summarizing what the big picture is, but it is all about analyzing the details, the finer points, literally down into the raw data level. What can we analyze about things that have been changed via maintenance actions on the system? So that's next Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern time on July 19th, and hopefully we'll see you there. Otherwise, everyone have a fantastic rest of your afternoon. Thanks, bye.